Welcome. This is very exciting that this is a very popular event. Welcome. I hope, try to take off those extra sweaters so it doesn't get too warm in here. My name is Ebba Boye. I am the leader of Rethinking Economics Norway. We are part of an international organization working to change the economic curriculum and economic field. We want more critical debate about what is being taught around the world's universities in economics. We want to bring in more pluralist ideas, more economic theories. We find that economics curriculum today is too narrow, one-sided, and that the world is changing very, very quickly, and that the future that you will be moving into might look very different from what the models are telling right now. So we have local groups around different universities of Norway, and we are now hoping to start up a group here at BI. We organized a big event here in April, Rethinking Finance. And yeah, I'm hoping that the people find this talk engaging and that you will join us later. And I have, come talk to me after. They will write your email down. And maybe then you can help create more of these events. So this event today, we are organizing together with SBO Business Society, or they have done most of the organizing of getting this together. They have also ordered the pizza, which will be served a bit later. So I hope you're not too hungry. Pizza will arrive when the talk is done, about like 6:45, 7. So I hope you are patient for that. There are some drinks here, but we'll probably have a small break in the middle. So that is Rethinking Economics. I will answer more questions about that later, but let's go over to the topic for today, why you have come: sustainable finance in the 21st century. And private finance has huge power to shape our economy, and it is changing. So the question you have to ask is, when we have a discussion later and open it for debates, and for you to think about what they're talking about here on stage today. Is this what you are being taught? Should there be changes? Is this relevant? And I'm hoping to hear from you later on how this fits with what your curriculum is today. I think I will start by introducing our first speaker, and then I will. Today we have both Monica Mead, Anders Fagernes, and Therese Stoknes, who will all come here. But we'll start off with Monica Mead, who will give a talk about 20 minutes. Will give us an introduction to what really sustainable finance is, to make sure everybody's on the same page. And then Anders and Therese will come up here on the stage with Monica, and we'll have a conversation about it. And they will also try to dig deeper into a deeper question about what this really is about, and is it really changing, and how do we need to change the curriculum to get there. Monica, she leads the Committee on Academic Cooperation in NORSIF. I don't know if you know the organization NORSIF. It's a Norwegian organization association for people, actors within the financial sector who are working for more sustainable and not only sustainable, but also responsible investments in finance. And she's working actively on pushing this idea. So, and she doesn't do that, she works at Nordea. So I'll give the floor to you, Monica. Thank you.
And to the student organization and Rethinking, I have to thank you for being invited, because I'm very engaged in this subject. I also went to this school a long time ago, so it's nice to be back. This is a theme we can talk about 2 days because it's so broad and so deep. But I try to focus on, I just give an introduction, as Ebba said, so we all are on the same page, and then I try to focus on finance and the finance subject. I don't know how many of you are taking any courses related to finance? Because, especially for you, this is a kind of a check if there is on the page it should be, or or if you have to find some information besides pay to be relevant for the employee. I also work, of course, from the employee side towards universities, being head of the academic committee, to say that they have to have timely courses, both for technology, goes for sustainability and other things, because I promote sustainability. So I just start then, and I can say that we try to take questions while presenting. If it gets too much, we have to change and meet initiative, and we take it afterwards. But if it's just some question here and there, then it's okay. So what I will go through is what is sustainability in practice, because there's so many definitions, understanding, perspective on that, and how does it affect the investment management and SGF process. Actually, as it is actually going to talk about what it does to the financial sector before I go into the investment management. And then looking forward, what's going to happen from now on forward, and then sum up what is the sense of what has been said. So what is it in practice? And just to say how broad it is, because we think very much climate these days, environment, climate, but it's so much more. It's ecology, culture, politics, economy. So the financial crisis is part of an unstable finance, which also actually part of sustainability, because sustainability is about things lasting for generation. If things is not unstable or even imbalanced, we have problems. So it's actually very broad, much broader than the term we use every day. And then you can say that maybe the most used definition is from our Gro Harlem Brundtland, which it's 32 years since she actually invented that definition, which UN is still using in all their UN groups today. So I will not go through it, but that is kind of the original. And going along with, we see new things, new issues that we have to manage pop up. There is a definition that has prolonged it a little, that says that it is about our human development, that we can do our development and at the same time make sure sustaining the ability of natural system to provide natural resources, because they're part of our production. We are mentioning a production, that's all the take finance know that. But we also need the resources that go into the production. And we should do that without undermining the integrity and stability of the nature system. And we're talking about the nature system of the earth, and that's kind of far-fetched when you talk probably of studying finance, but they're getting closer to each other. So, without undermining the integrity and stability of the natural system, kind of fluffy maybe sentence, but to make it more concrete, the planetary boundaries concept, that's a concept made out of something of a person called Johan Rockström. He works at the Stockholm Resilience Center, that's a research center, and together with 28 other well-known researchers around the world, in 2009 defined that there's 9 systems that makes the earth resilient. And if you start to break one of those 9 systems, we will have problems, because we could either make damage, which is irreversible to the earth, or we can be empty out of resources, which we take for granted today. That's on a few things. So they defined in 2009. This is well known in the UN and EU and the whole world. So if you haven't seen it before, it's nothing a small group is invented and talk about. This is a very common thing, and also the thing that the UN climate panel that had a report in this last autumn, they take this as a starting point. So in 2009, almost 3 out of 9 boundaries was already broken by the way we live today, how we use our world. And now 4 out of 9, and they're interconnected. So as more and more of these are broken, it goes faster and faster that the others also will go way beyond the threshold. And that's why when you hear on news, you cannot open the newspaper today without reading something about sustainability, because it is not just an idea or fear of doing it. It is real. But what's positive is that we still have time to do something about it. But that requires like the American like you, also mine, you have to start to do something today, tomorrow. You have to know, we have to have the knowledge. So that's why we are here today. This means actually a call for action, this situation. Because the EU Commission, UN, everybody agrees that these global trends affect us all, regardless of country, continent, what we work with. And it looks like we now need new economy models. The neoclassic economic models we have used so far, they don't account for the resources in their models, the resources we are using, which is diminishing. And at some point, we cannot make or produce what we are used to, or have enough food. So we have to change that. We have to change new solutions like maybe go over to circular economy instead of more linear economy we have today. We need new business models, because the new business models are just supporting our economy system. And we need new mindsets and new behavior, and maybe curious new behavior. So this is the starting point. So how does this affect the finance sector? And what's special with the finance sector compared to all other sectors is that we kind of are the prerequisite for their existence. All sectors are relying on finance to get loans, to have their investment, to grow their business. They also, when they have excess money and want to make those money grow as much as possible, they also come to us. So, I mean, the finance sector is an extremely important player in the society in general. So, therefore, it's interesting to see how it affects the finance sector. EU, I will say, is that body, world body that takes this, maybe not the most seriously, but they managed to do something concrete with it. They have started really good actions, which is coherent, consistent. They made time, they put themselves on a timeline and have action plans within tight schedule. They follow them. So I'm quite impressed with their commission. And they, now it's actually a year ago, that a group called a high-level expert group that was put down. It was both from finance and then also the authorities, coming with a suggestion to Air Commission of what to do to start a new path and new actions. They got this in January, and in March, Air Commission already made the action plan after 2 months. And it was 10 big steps, and it should all be finished within 2019. And it's big things like new legislation, new taxonomy, new benchmark models on equities and exchange. Sorry, sometimes no issue in English, especially in the evening. I can really tell. But they go through the systematic change of the structure within finance. That's the point. It's not an action here and an action there. It has to be systematic. It has to be coherent, and that they manage to do that. So that's that will affect each country in Europe. Either you believe it or not. I mean, if my company should say, but this, I mean, the most of the problem is in Asia, China, we are here. I mean, and we don't buy stuff from there either. I mean, we are purely Nordic. How does this relate to us? The EU actions will relate to them, and I can promise you. All financial systems in Europe. So that's 3 main things they focus on. And here we come to finance and investment, because they say we have to reorient capital flow towards sustainable investments. And what does that mean? If you look at all the investment money that exists in the world, I mean, today they decide what to invest in based on what they think give the best return. And then you can say a best return in short time. They can use fundamental analysis we are used to. But the thing is that right now, we are kind of on a tipping point looking backwards, be quite a steady liner compared to what we can expect ahead of us. So we have to start to think very differently when we assess what to invest in. And what's good is that we see this explosion of innovation and entrepreneurship, because we need that. If we are able to solve a lot of the problem we have in front of us, then we are told we have 12 years. I mean, maybe for you it seems long, but I can promise you 12 years goes very fast. Then we need a lot of innovation. The problem with innovation when it comes to finance is that finance institutions, they look at risk, they like to be sure that they get a return on their money. Innovation companies, they provide a lot of opportunity, but also huge risk. They have business model banks don't understand. They have little resources. They maybe not have that perfect professional finance plan they usually assess when they give loans. But those companies are also those who are going to save us. So, and the banks and the finance institutions, they don't have the competence to assess this. So we have to teach them how should I invest different, either if it is by giving loan, assessing a bond, issuing a bond, or it is putting money into investments on behalf of themselves and all their customers. So reorienting to the right projects, the right companies, the right entrepreneurs is one thing. And then manage financial risk that especially comes from climate change, because that's the thing I think you all have now felt that there is not just words. So of course that's maybe the most tangible. And foster transparency in a long term of financial and economy activity is very like theoretical words for it, but it's actually meaning quite a lot. Short term versus long term, I assume it's familiar with. But transparency is extremely important for up to now companies all over the world. They are not used to be transparent of what they do, how they do it, what their plans are, what the metrics are, how they progress compared to a plan. They say, no, this is private. I mean, like you feel you have a private life, but it can't be anymore, because if they don't start to be transparent, the society cannot act towards and assess them. Are they going in the right direction? Should I support that company either by being a consumer or investing money in them or not? We need to know how they operate. We need to know how their business are doing according to coming risk, coming opportunities. And this is hard because we like history figures, we like service, we like everything. We can kind of say, this is for sure. But going forward, nothing is for sure. So this is what EU is going to help all the countries in all the finance institutions. So they say, I should only take some extracts. The finance system has a key role to play in delivering that set of ambition. That is to making Europe the most sustainable region in the world and dragging the other countries with. Offer Europe a powerful tool for achieving its goal of economic prosperity, social inclusion, and environment regeneration. This is the goal, and finance is maybe together with innovation, those two are the most important means of reaching these goals. So coordinate approach to sustainable development, one that synchronizes changes in financial system with action in the real economy. So what does this mean? Because now going into investment, and those who would maybe be an analyst or working as a manager or something, what does that mean for asset management? They have to promote high standards on the SE issue. And now we're coming into what are the starting point today and what should it be. Ensure client sustainability and ethical preference are reflected in investments. What do you think if you come in, if you have some excess money you want to invest or play with to learn how to play on the first, please help me with that name.
Stock exchange.
What?
Stock market.
Stock market, thank you. I mean, do you know what questions to ask for your finance institution about what they do, how they do it, what options you have. I work in one of North Europe's biggest bank. I can promise you, almost no customer asks any questions. They don't know, they don't have a clue what's done with the money when it comes to sustainability. And maybe the advisor don't buy it. I shouldn't probably say that, but that's the starting point. I mean, be real. So, how should we get moved to make changes in working with asset management? When you work with sustainable asset management, you talk about the expression ESG. Is that no? Has everybody heard about ESG?
No, and I did finance 3 months ago.
That's scary because that's not new information. ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance factors. When you talk about sustainability in the financial world or in general, that's the three main kind of roles when you have to deal with them all. So that's good. I thought that this is so obvious, but okay, that's very good. So environmental factor is like nature resources. I talked about that. Carbon emission that we know about. Energy efficiency, I mean renewable and using energy efficiency. I mean that's probably if you read the newspaper, becoming common words, pollution, sustainability initiatives, all those going in the environmental. Then you have social, a little more fluffy to understand it. It is, I mean, human rights in general is affecting this a lot. There is a human rights convention that's celebrating 75 years today. And actually we are less good at following that today than when it was launched 75 years ago. So that's where we go backwards. But it is about, because actually bringing people out of poverty also has something to do with our ability to handle it. It has something to do with our economy system to manage growth, the things we need to handle it. So it's not just, I can take one step back. Sustainability used to be something you associate with ethical, something you could choose to do or not. And then it has social responsible investment, but it was just about being good, doing good. Today, you can have it. It's much more than that. I mean, you just have to do it. Or we all are in big problems. So it's not about just helping somebody, it's helping yourself because we're in the same situation. Everybody is in the same situation. So that's why human rights, well-being, how we live our lives, it also affects corruption and that kind of thing. It's very much about security and our personal security and misuse of that, which is becoming a problem with the technology world. And when it comes to governance factor, it's governance a word you use much in the subjects. But when you come into working life, it's a word you will hear a lot. But it's how you ensure that a company has control of its goal, challenges, how they efficiently work with them, how they avoid corruption, bad conduct, all these things, and make sure that things are how they ought to be. It's about having an overview and being in control, you can say. So how the board of a company are set up, who is sitting there, what competence have they, and how do they work with the management group and the management group? Do they actually, are they loyal to the whole organization? Are they loyal to themselves? How should they find out? Are we following the legal systems? Are we compliant? All this is part of that. And when you do investment, actually that's very important. If you invest in a company which isn't good at being compliant, suddenly you can have a bomb go off as a literally, and the value of it cracks. So to know if you're doing a good investment, you have to assess the governance structure of the company you're going to invest in. This one is the factor we are doing best right now because that's obvious and that's kind of it makes sense without being if you're looking into sustainability or not. But now, of course, you put the sustainability kind of the spectators on when you look at governance in addition to the one you used to do. and then social and environmental is coming in addition. So, current changes with ESG integration. I can start to say that today, I start in 2007. The UN, they opened up a standard called Principle for Responsible Investment. And today, through 2000, the financial institutions are part of that. That means that you should follow, and it is like, we all know the oil fund, they have these guidelines. The Principle for Sustainable, UN Principle for Sustainable Investment has kind of the same. And you sign up to it, and that says something, give you direction how to conduct. And you have to conduct it that way. It's voluntarily to sign up, and if you sign up and don't do it, what's the point? So 2,000 companies have done that, and they represent a huge amount of our investment around the world. So, and they are talking about ESG, so everybody that signed up know about ESG. But only there's been made a study that this money, how much did they change their investment behavior after they signed up compared to before they signed up? Because if you just do the same, I mean, you're not going towards a sustainable world. 1% doesn't change the behavior in their investment process. That's the status for 2018. So, and why is this so hard? And even, I don't say that people don't care. Some actually do care, but it's so difficult. And why is it difficult? This is important to understand if you're going to work with it. Because nobody knows what is a successful ESG integration. And there's been a kind of conviction that you don't earn as much if you invest in as focus on ESG. It's, when it comes to the analysis, it's more important to do. It's more uncertain. So in asset management, they're proud and say, our role is to give as much performance out of the money we take care of our own behalf of our customers. But I said that's a conviction. It's not necessarily the truth. It's been a lot of research on this now, so that shows otherwise. But of course, a lot of people say, is it just another trend or a bubble? Shouldn't the company be accountable for its shareholders, not the community, employees, and customers? Does it look different for different investors? Or do they do it the same way or understand it the same way? And does it go far enough? I should not answer any of these now. I mean, I can be better questions afterwards. But these are things we are striving with. And in addition to this, of course, if you want to analyze and really want to do the right thing, you need information and data. It's not systematic data. It's no still structured way and common way to report. There has come a law. A lot of laws on reporting, but it's on a very high level. You don't get the answer to what do you really do. What's the result of your new actions if you have any? I mean, there's so many questions here. It's not easy. And again, that's where EU Commission is coming in and making structure so it's easy to compare, easy to analyze. Yeah. So I don't have that much left. So another very good, I mean, one thing is the EU Commission and sustainability action points, but there are also a lot of good voluntary work, which is quite profound, and that is something called Financial Stability Board, which is a lot of the finance ministers and many finance ministers and a lot of the big financial institutions that made a financial stability board. They made that after the finance crisis to avoid a new one, and they are helping out and try to make standards and way looking at things and taxonomy in wording and what to do, and they try to guideline on governance, strategy, risk management, and metrics and targets. So they start to have the common way of working. And that's actually been quite a success. And all the actions starting around the world, they're connected and try to build on it. So looking forward, positive trends, because you can be kind of, well, this is difficult, but there's a lot of positive things, and we have time, and we have a window of opportunity. And that's what we should focus on, but we have to have the knowledge what the starting point are or where we're heading. So shareholders really start to care about SG, and that means even where I work in such a quite big bank, the top management, the board starts to get questioned what you actually do on this. Because now, if nobody asks, it's very easy not to care. When everything else is burning around, you have a paradigm shift in technology, and you have to deal with. I mean, you have so many day-to-day problems. So institutions are increasing the resources to work with the ESG. I mean, if a company says, no, we start, but there's no change in budget and no resources, what have that actually started? So that's a good thing to look at when you analyze. Institutional investors are also beginning to appreciate investment opportunities because you have a tendency, especially in finance, we live off assessing risk. That, I mean, with risk also comes opportunity, or big changes. Comes new risk, but also a lot of new opportunities. And that's important to emphasize. And regulators are really starting to care about ESG. So EU is coming with a lot of new laws within these 18 months, which hits the bank quite hard. Growth of corporate governance codes are in focus because if you do your governance work well, you easily have control of your risk and your opportunities and can adjust your business model. Grow on stewardship codes. Stewardship is, I mean, when you invest, there's techniques you can either, or all fund has been discussed a lot. Sometimes we talk about they withdraw from some investment. But what happens then? New money come in and then replace it. The company goes on as before. So what we prefer, or which is becoming more common, is that when you are invested in a company and you see it's not going in the right direction, you start to go into dialogue with the management, the board, and try to have a plan and change. That gives much more impact than just withdrawing. That's what we call stewardship. Engagement with portfolio companies should be tried first. That is, I mean, if you can imagine having an investment in Asia or something, and actually the law is so bad for some of human rights and climate that your standard is much higher than the authorities. Then you should cooperate with other financial institutions, NGOs, and other organizations to try to make a change. And then there's the Financial Stability Board, which is very important. And they make this very nice name, the Task Force on Climate-Related Disclosure. So, and OECD has also very good supporting guidelines, tools to help business. The problem is that business don't even know that exists. So, but it's still very positive. So, the last, I can stop after this one. Two very important tools. This is OECD made a special big guidelines for investors, asset owners and investors. That was after our fund had not understood what it meant to be signed up by OECD and made it like a big case. They lost and said, now we have to explain again that actually those who invest have to follow the same rules as business have in general. And they also now will launch next month this due diligence help tool. So I can stop there.
Thank you, Monica.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And Monica, also thank you for the job that you are doing every day on pushing this agenda. And not just watching what is happening, but every day working within your own institution, working to get people together, making this change actually happen. I think a topic for another session would be to just talk about how exciting it is to be trying to scream, the world is changing rapidly, this is going to change, we need to be ahead, and then I'm sure you meet a lot of conservative forces, but that'll be a topic for another day.
Very good observation.
But I was actually just wondering, just before we go on to talk, if you have a question, you can come with it. But I also want to know, for example, she was talking about the EU action plan for sustainable finance. Is that something that's been a part of your courses? Have you heard about it? No? But what about the ESG? No?
Slightly
Glad-
technical.
Yes.
Yeah, just two questions. One related to personal finance and private finance, how you see that changing in the future, and also how is industry trying to attract the people in this room for future investment into green industry?
They see they need new generation coming in with new competence. But actually, how honest can I be? There's a lot of the people that employ for solving putting up new positions to solve new problems that I don't know that well, they still have a tendency to use the same criteria and mindset as before, so they don't see what's actually needed. That's what, but it's all about competence and lack of competence. So we have kind of a war against. I mean, one thing is university coming up from university to have the right competence, but we also need board members, management, and others to increase their competence in this area right here now. So that we have to work on several levels in parallel. So I would say it's starting, but it takes too long time compared to the time we have. But I think what we see is the retail market when it comes to more personal investment, that's rising. Before it was only investment. The awareness among generation X and E is extremely higher than before them. So that's a very positive thing.
But do you see them working or aiming at short-term gain or long-term gain for young people?
What we see is when they come in for interview, they have a very conscious about if they want to work in a sustainable company or not, and ask questions. And now it's more turned around. I think it's more the ones that are going to be employed as into the company than the other way around. And I approve that. So just do that.
Thank you. We'll have the rest of the panel up. If Per Espen Stoknes and Anders Hagenes can just come up, and Hagenes, we can stand around this. And maybe, can we get some more water to somebody? Great. Thank you. So thank you so much, Anders Fagernes. He is an economist. He is head of sustainability at the company Gilmington Kise. So what he does every day is working with companies, both financial companies and other companies who are trying to make a strategy to become more sustainable. So you're really out there working with the business sector in Norway, pushing that agenda.
Helping them to communicate it and not communicate if they don't.
Great. We'll get into that. And also, we are happy that also Per Espen Stoknes joined us for this conversation. He leads the Center of Green Growth here at BI. I think some of his students are maybe here. And you have a background in economics and psychology, and I have your PhD thesis at home. It's very interesting. It's on economic metaphors and its consequences for climate policy and our understanding of money. Maybe we'll get deep into some of those issues too. And we also just authored a new article, Redefining Green Growth with Planetary Boundaries, with Johan Rockström of the Stockholm Resilience Center. And we will, I guess my first question, I'll start with Anders, and you can, it's sort of, we'll start with the status quo, like where the presentation will kind of just give what is if you can say something, do you agree with where we're at right now? How far are we?
I was surprised by the fact that it's only 1% that has put their money into it and actually changed their behavior. I was a bit surprised by that because you hear a lot of these companies and the finance industry talking a lot about it. But then again, we should remember that this task force on climate-related disclosures, they presented that report 2 years ago. And then there's a lot of people within the sector that has been opposing it. And it's only been 2 years, and it's a short amount of time in the corporate world, and especially in a very conservative industry as the finance industry. So from the positive side, I'm surprised by how fast it has moved, especially on the regulatory agenda. But also when I'm out there now talking with the banks, I'm talking with the investors, institutional investors. I've used a lot of time doing that over the last 2 years. And they are concerned, and they are personally concerned, and they want to use the power that they have in the right direction. But they don't know what to do yet. So that's why competence, education, and actually sitting down and figuring it out. And that's what they're doing now. They're sitting there trying to put all of this stuff into Excel and put it out and figure it out. Figure out how to make money. So yes.
You don't understand anything until you made an Excel model of it.
Not in the finance industry.
Yeah, but do you agree with this sort of status quo? I mean, we haven't gotten very far, but we are sort of heading straight into a very big change that's coming.
First, fantastic to see a full room here. Congratulations, Ebba. I think it's wonderful. I think you have amazing careers in front of you if you dig into this area a bit more deeper. Just as you can hear, competence is what they're looking for. So wonderful to have you all here. And I think if we are to assess the development, it could be easy. You can have many levels, but let's make 3 stages. The first, we could say that it's a quite immature market where, like Monica, when she's out, she has to explain, do you know what ESG is? And then she gets 2 hands. And then, okay, ESG is all these things. That's an immature kind of, maybe they put ESG on the slide, but they don't really know what it is if you ask them. That's a problem. So it's in its infancy. The second level is when, shall we say, it's more like image concerns and compliance with regulations, it was behind it, and because they have to report to Morgan Stanley CI, MSCI index, so that's why they do it. And also maybe to kind of try to avoid the most severe sins, like investing in tobacco, weapons, porn, whatever. Third stage, we would say, we arrive at when sustainability is the new norm. It's the normal. So you don't really have to say it's ESG, because that's what it is. I mean, it's not corrupt today, of course, your investment should be corrupt, and the same way with ESG. So where are we on this simple 1, 2, 3 level? And I would say maybe somewhere between the first and the second. So, I mean, ESG, as you said, buzzword. People now know maybe that it stands for environmental, social, and governance, but they haven't really internalized it. So then also, on the positive side, it's been an amazing growth, as you were saying. It's only 10 years ago since the first report came out that said something about ESG. It was based on Kofi Annan, the previous UN president, who sent a letter to all the major finance institutions and said, please, 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 connect to our global compact and do something about it. And then they made a report, and since then ESG has blossomed. And for having something from just a letter to a worldwide instrument with databases, and now you have people with the ESG title in them, etc. around the world, it's quite quick. So it's not hopeless. Depending on how you define the total value of financial assets, which is a terrible, difficult thing to do, is it $100 trillion, or is it $500 trillion? I don't know. Some say it's 100. Then about 20 of them.
It's probably more.
Yes.
It's not even a mention number because there's so many of them that are out there.
But around 20-25 of them would be invested according to SRE, as sustainable and responsible investments, and some also would put the same number on ESG. But the problem is that sustainable responsible investment has up to now been mostly out of so-called negative filtering. So you throw out the things you don't like, the tobacco, the weapon, the porn, etc. But ESG is when you really build it into your organization. And that's where we're at, I think. And I'm very happy that you are both pushing this, but we cannot pat our backs and say that this is anywhere near what's needed.
If I can comment on those figures,
Please.
because I'm part of this organization, which is their sister organization like Schiencebased, FinCEF, Eurocef, US CIF, Australia CIF, and they all, of course, was good. They every second year they give a report on the status, and according to their report, and then Eurocef just came out with their 2018 report, there it says that 40% of all investment money in Europe is in some kind of SG strategy. How does that compare to the 1%? But I can tell you why, because there is play with figures here. And that's very hard being the receiver of the information, because you get confused. They have 7 different strategies you can do in ESG or sustainable investment, or as you call it. And they use, if you use one of those 7, you're part of being counted.
Okay.
But one of them is divesting. And when we talk about sustainability going forward, I mean, divesting doesn't bring the world 1 centimeter closer to where the direction we're going. So actually, they're counting something positive, which is not positive compared to the problems we're going to solve. It's just definitions and words.
Everybody wants to stamp without it
Yeah.
meaning something.
So when you can detach those 7 strategies, it's mostly impact investing. And really ESG, by using ESG factors and actually giving that more weight than just usual fundamental analysis, for example, that counts and brings us in the right direction. That's why you get these huge differences. So it's but theoretically, yes, we are extremely moved, but in reality, that actually ends up in action and gives impact and direction, it is still closer to 1 than those 4.
But Anders, that's I mean, finance is not finance just for the financial sector itself, or just for the people working in finance. That would be my perspective. It's about the real firms, the firms that are actually making. It's about it's about getting the money to the firms who are going to make this change. But then we sort of got into a little bit. So you work with their communication.
Mhm.
Is it the greenwashing? Are they trying to portray themselves as greener, or are you helping companies who are actually making this change, are becoming greener?
Yeah, I would say that when you look at this, some of them think they're doing a great job because they have reduced their carbon emission somewhat. And then they want a huge pat on the back because they've done that. Others are actually going into it really, really hard and thinking hard about it. I think the problem that we have now in the finance industry in Norway is that everyone is concerned with their relative position compared to the other banks. And it means that all this money, there's some very important men at the top and some women who say, oh, this is sustainability, we need some strategy for that. And then what happens is that it comes down and then there's a strategy and then it goes down to the marketing department. And then the marketing department is like, what are we going to do? And then they go to some advisors. Maybe if they were smart, they would go to some management consultants and ask them. Maybe they come to us or some advertising firm. If the people that sit there on the other side don't know what sustainability is, they see it as a positioning tool. They see it as something that can drive sales. And they don't ask questions. My job is to ask questions. That's my main job. Ask critical questions, because I don't only work with the marketing of it, I also work with the PR, so the journalist. So if I don't ask the questions that a journalist would ask, I'm not doing my job. So I like to use H&M, for instance, as an example. You could stand and say that you have the most circular business model on earth, which they do. They in the textile industry, they're pretty much the best one. They've done a lot. They can say that they're doing a lot on child labor, but it doesn't help when they have their basement full of child labor still and burn their clothes in Denmark, 400 tons of it. Because then there's a discrepancy between what you say and what you do, which means that the customers, they don't know what they should think, or they don't trust you anymore. And if you wanna do this right, you really have to think long term about how to create trust from your consumers. So that's my job, get them to realize that. It's quite hard, but it's not that hard either. I mean, trust it's a difficult thing to build, if you do as you say and say as you do, over time, people will trust you. So, and I think that's my long answer to that question.
I guess the problem here is, of course, you have different things happening in the financial sector. One part is that the financial sector should be green, but you have the financial sector that wants to be green and is looking for green investments,
Yeah.
and then knowing what green investments should are there, and then it becomes a lot about these ESG. And my question is, so I mean, I just want to move ahead. So what is it going to take to really make this change happen? To really get enough finance into the actual green projects, and how to find out which projects are green. I mean, there are two questions there. So what I was trying to say, and
can I ask you the first one first? I think that one of the biggest problems right now is that there's not enough green assets out there. And I think that's why they're appreciating in value. You see that in the green bonds. There's not that many.
Or the interpretation of what's green.
Or the interpretation.
Is wrong. So you have that one as well.
Yeah, you see it in the green bonds especially. I mean, the interest rate on the green bonds is now, I mean, you can loan money cheaper if it's a green bond than it is, and if it's an ordinary gray bond.
Which is a fantastic thing.
But it's a great thing. But then you have
For the
Sparbank.
customers, not for you guys.
But then you have Sparbank, and what are they doing? They're issuing a green bond on 1 billion euros, and then what standard are they using? Tech 10. They're using Tech 10, which is an old building standards from 2010, which basically is a bunch of engineers who said we're going to build the wall 40 centimeters thick.
Yeah. And the floors.
And the floors.
Remember the floors.
That's it.
And the roof.
And then they didn't go to the Norwegian market to get the money. They went to the European market because the investors there, they want it. They don't know what standard is. Tech 10, that sounds good. It'd be interesting to speak to Sparbank about this. I haven't, but
I just want to move a bit ahead into like the real institutional changes that might have to be made. I mean, we have a current financial sector in the stock market that is on a quarterly basis you are reporting. And for now, the reporting mostly is on the financial side of the company every quarter, and you have this short-term drive all the time. So I want to hear you reflect around like how can we move from this short-term thinking to the long-term thinking, and is that compatible with today's financial system? That's my question.
I think that's for Monica.
I think here's where EU and their action plan comes in. And they do really good things because, and of course, you can regulate a lot, and some we have to regulate, so you force new actions. But if it's too much regulatory, people just get kind of, it's too much, then I don't care. So it's a fine balance, but they will come in and force things around there. And you shake your head when I said it's not good for the banks when they get cheap loans to green projects, but it is because that's less risk. So I mean, this is what we do: less risk, less price, less interest rate. So black investments, that is possible.
I'm not sure if your CFO agrees completely if everything is placed in low interest bonds, but I get your point.
Yeah, but if you
Pricing
have
risk,
less loss of money and bankruptcy, and you're actually going the right direction, it is also profitable. The problem comes back to, again, to have knowledge to see the difference between a green and not green, to understand the risk, and I will emphasize the opportunity, because there is so much opportunity.
Yes.
And if we focus on that, I think everything will go a little faster. We're very focused on the risk.
So I would like to step a little bit back, because I like what you said, Anders, about banks and others comparing themselves with other banks to see how well they're doing. So it's relative comparison all the time. And maybe this green bond with Tech 10 is relatively better than something they have elsewhere. Now, what we have been working at here, and also with Johan Rockström, is to change all that into a system where you evaluate it not on whether it's a little bit better than the worst, but if it's sufficient. I need to see if it's sufficient for the time we have left to come back within planetary boundaries. Then you need science-based targets. So If you haven't heard that word, please note it down. Science-based target. Google it. It's a broad coalition, and they're setting up metrics where they take the best planetary boundary science and then combine that with economic value-added data. So at my course, we teach this basic principle of carbon productivity. Any investment that increases the value added in the project with more than 5% per year in carbon productivity, that is in accordance with the 2-degree target.
And that's great. The problem as an economist I have with it is that an approach like that, it is as extremist in the carbon direction as growth and is in the economic history. And so, because sustainability to me is a broader concept. Is it also targets for other things than carbon?
Yes.
So waste and
Yes.
Okay.
So there are, you can take the 9 planetary boundaries, and then you break down all of them. So you can have a nitrogen carbon productivity, for instance, if it's agricultural related, and you would have a biodiversity related metric if it's somehow related to forests and seas. So it's a framework within which you can have science-based targets for how much improvement each unit of value added has to bring.
And then all companies will be benchmarked.
Yes.
Is the idea in an ideal world.
According to similar benchmark. And the basic principle we use is the value added unit, because all companies have a similar relationship to the totality based on the value added. Just add one more thing. To just do one simple estimate of what is needed is that today we have about $300 billion invested each year in solar and renewable energy. That's a lot, but it is way too little. To get where we need to be, it has to be above $1,000 billion per year. And that should be, as you probably said, an easy task to finance if there was enough projects. But why don't then the finance sector also kind of help and push the project capacity up until we're at that level? One new innovation that does this, and you can all check it out, that's the next thing to Google, Join Trine. Have you heard about it? Trine? You should. Because it's a crowdfunding platform where anybody with capital can go in and find projects that they can invest in. And then they will leverage that money because they get private funds, government fund, and then they go to you guys to get the top leverage. So the government takes a high risk funds, first loser, what do you call it? First loss thing?
Yeah.
First loss?
The top risk.
Top risk. And then you and I, and you, and me, and you can also put money in, and they will aggregate those projects until they are invested. And then there's a typically pretty high interest rate because it's so profitably to replace those old structures that they are out to replace.
But
Yes?
yeah, so but and that's great, and those kind of innovative ideas is exactly what we need. But it's also the question: are those great ideas going to be great ideas on the side? Are we changing the mainstream? Are we changing the main way the financial sector is working? And so that's sort of back to my question about the short-term thinking versus the long-term thinking. I mean, we have these pension funds that should be long-term, but they're still sort of so often based on these like quarterly results. Yeah, Monica, if you have any.
I have a comment.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, we have to follow that kind of thing, but for it to help, and since I also worked against with academia, I mean, I could have another lesson on how we have to have new learning platforms going forward. Because, I mean, we have so much great science, but what if they don't get out in the real world, if they don't implement it, what's their worth? I mean, you can talk about the value of what was the word worth there. So the point is, when you have this great, I mean, this is a challenge you probably have, and I know you in your Stockton have had it, when because everybody sees it, but they say, how do we implement it? How can you translate it into something practical for us? That is to spread it. It's to engage with those who should bring it out. Not only, as I mean, academia has to reach out. and maybe take it from A to B together with somebody that really understands you're on the same level of competence to kind of escalate the innovation of exactly as good kind of findings as you have. So that I think we have a common challenge to work together on, because I mean this only just fit in. It's just we are in two worlds, we're in silos with two different starting points when it comes to competences, and don't know what to do. So that I challenge you on, and I will be there for the finance side.
So what makes me really positive about the science-based targets and the data is that I see this in the construction industry. So I've worked a lot with the construction industry and how to think for the 21st century with them. And what is happening is that you have this is also from the EU. It's going to take a bit of time to explain it, but there is a directive called the REACH directive, which is on poisons in different projects. So there's a lot of poisons in this. There's a lot of poison in the wall here, and it's toxic. So you need to have a sort of a description on that, and that's been digitized. So there's databases on what sort of toxics there are in these products. And so what's coming now is environmental product declarations, and these things are getting merged. So it means that I would say in about 2 years' time, 3, 4, 5 maybe, an architect can sit down and on Google say that, okay, I want these environmental products. I want this sort of benchmark on it. And then they can design.
From a life cycle analysis point of view?
So that's coming as well. So they're sitting there figuring it out. And what does that mean for a business? It means that you cannot hide anymore. It means that everything becomes transparent, whether you like it or not. So it's impossible to hide. It's impossible to lie.
I was wondering if there's any questions from the audience. Yeah.
I was have 3 suggestions.
Oh, yeah.
No, regarding the Trina, I think it's a nice initiative, kind of Kickstarter or Indiegogo. But I was wondering, what are your thoughts on mega funds, kind of like Andrew Lowe's on medicine, for example, more on the big hedge funds investing in big projects. What if there's any advantage in leveraging this amount of money instead of doing more small targeted projects?
Of course, I would say both. And also, I'm quite heartened last year by Lawrence Fink, the boss of BlackRock, the biggest investment fund in the world, coming up very clearly and saying that society is demanding that companies, both public and private, serve a social purpose. To prosper over time, every company must not only deliver financial performance, but also show how it makes a positive contribution to society. I mean, this is not a do-gooder. This is not kind of some goddamn tree hugger. This is a...
He wants to make a lot of money.
For those who don't know it, BlackRock is the world's biggest asset manager.
$6 trillion US.
And also, it's of course, as you say, economically based. There was a review out by a researcher called Friede in 2015. They reviewed 2,000 studies on the correlations between sustainability parameters and profitability. And more than 90% of them came out positive or zero, and only 10% had a negative correlation. So it's pretty well science-based too, to say that this is smart for BlackRock.
Yeah. And why is it smart? I think it's smart because when I work with these industries, I work with the waste industry, construction industry, energy, electricity. I mean, the real economy. And I think this is fundamental for you guys as students. When you go into finance, you will be sitting with Excel sheets a lot. And what happens behind those Excel sheets? There's a lot of people out there that are working, that are putting together dams, that are putting hydropower into use, that are putting windmills into use. That is the glue to society. It's a lot of jobs that are being created. What happens, so I studied the financial crisis, I was studying economics during the financial crisis. What happened is that finance forgot about their reason to exist. They started investing and innovating in their own products instead of stewarding the economy and funneling money into the real economy and projects that we need. Because the risk is technical, but that's what happened. And I think that was a big reason behind the crash as well. Now we have another 50 years, I would say, maybe 80 years of an investment cycle into new infrastructure. The infrastructure that we need for tomorrow. I mean, Warren Buffett, he invests in railways. You need railways. You need the physical stuff. And it's a lot of economic growth that is going to be there. And I think it maybe lead us to the next question, which is, I think, heavily debated with, and also Bolsonaro, the new Brazilian president, made a statement at Davos where he sets ecology and nature up against growth. And I think that's where we are, and the debate is at the moment. What do we need? And how much do we need of each?
Well, yeah, and if I mean, do we can we have a stock market that continues to be dependent not only on all the firms in the world, not all the firms, but enough firms making money, and but so somehow dependent on the companies not just making money but making more and more money. Do we have sort of institutional structure that will make it very difficult to not continue our path of increasing consumption and taking out resources from our world?
Yeah.
I mean, the question is if we're asking ourselves the right questions. Because we have to take a standpoint. I mean, we can continue to have growth, continue to live how we live today. Then we have to be aware that there maybe is not worth in 200 years. I mean, or something we don't, of course, know this time. So the point is, where do we start? Do we start that, of course, everybody still wants to live life, growth, but should we start with actually got some things we have to keep within, and that's the 9 planetary boundaries. So we start there and see how can we despair within that. That gives different questions than if you start on growth. So my question to you will be different if you ask the question one way or the other. And I can say personally, I think we should start with planetary boundaries, because I mean, it's actually to try to imagine how close it is. I think my grandchildren's children will live in 2200, which is very uncertain right now. So it's kind of, you can try to really feel like it's not that far down the road for your own family. So that's the starting point. And then it's, I mean, there's so many factors we haven't talked about today. I mean, clearly we have to have another new macroeconomic way of thinking, or at least have options and discuss it, not just go on.
Yeah.
And we haven't talked about the authorities playing in this. I mean, because today I had to narrow down, and we talked about the finances and that kind of thing. Because there's so many players that have to work together, they have to have clear direction. And coming back to investments, actually each country has to have a transparency plan, transition plan from how to handle the next 50, 60 years, because we have to change them. What does it do to us different sectors? How does it do to employment? All these kind of things they have to answer. And if I was an investor, I had to know to assess the companies and who to invest in. I have to know that plan, since that's black box. That's another thing why it's difficult to do the right thing as an investor. We need direction, we need clarity, both from EU, from the UN, and from the different countries. And to mention one very good role model here is Germany. So if you Google the sustainable plan Germany, it's very German, but they go a good way. Say so.
But that's also the point of economist Kate Raworth, who wrote the book Donut Economics, and she says sort of, let's stop talking about growth. Growth isn't the point. We have to build an economy where we cover like the basic human needs without going outside of the planetary boundaries, which you showed here earlier. And she says, so yeah, to create institution, that's what young economists should be working on. How can we fit into that donut? I didn't really explain it now, but how can we fit in, make a world that doesn't go outside the ecological boundaries? How can we make those institutions? That's what we need to be thinking about. And we have to make that happen. What she says, whether or not the economy grows. Maybe it grows, maybe it doesn't, but we can't have an economy that is dependent on growth. But then you're leading the Green Growth Center at BI, so I was wondering if you have any comments.
Well, the quickest way to stop change is to make companies run zero profits or deficits. Then they kind of dig their heels in, and investments go down. So,
Would you think that that's a good idea?
no.
No.
So that's why we need the smartest, best companies that have business models that make more money with less ecological footprint to outcompete the gray companies. So to put it very plainly, Tesla needs to kick General Motors in the balls until they're broke. Tesla needs to kill Daimler-Benz's business model until they're fully electric. That's the quickest way the market can do this. And actually, it's nothing new. Joseph Schumpeter, an economic historian, he has documented 5 of these creative destructive waves. So markets are terrific in killing the least profitable. And what we need is to get the business models that have a high resource productivity so that they can both make money and take down the resource waste, and then have them outcompete the oil companies. So here we see that, for instance, in Norway with Scatec Solar, one of the quickest growing companies. Their stock is outperforming the stock of Equinor, for instance, by a lot. So if you want change, make sure that you have a rapid growth in those companies that have a sustainable business model so they can outcompete those who doesn't have one. That's my position on this.
Yeah, I think that what I also see is that there's a lot of companies now that has been thinking about sustainability as a competitive advantage. DNV GL, I think, is the best example. They radically changed their entire business model in order to reap the opportunities and make a lot of money standardizing these things. What I'm concerned about is that there's a vacuum now in the next 2 years, unless governments come in and regulate in order to push the laggards, the ones that are lagging behind, and push them back up, or force them, or in some way incentivize or subsidize or give a prize to the ones that are great. The bad ones will outcompete the good ones. Because in the structure that we have now, in the economic model, which is a very linear value chain, so most people that went to this school, even I think graduated, I don't know, you guys tell me, how's Porter's value chain look like? Is it linear still in the books?
He's becoming.
Is he out?
No.
Are you teaching
sustainability?
But are you teaching creating shared value?
Yeah.
Because I mean, if he said that if he just drew it into a circle, the world would be a better place today.
Of course.
You haven't read since you went to school because Porter is supporting.
Yeah, no, I've read all the creating shared value stuff that he's come up with, but it's still, I'm just curious, is it still linear in the textbooks? You tell me.
Porter doesn't enter my curriculum.
It doesn't enter.
No.
But does it enter
Particularly not the linear value chain model. No.
But does it enter some of the curriculum here? Maybe, no?
I had project management last year, and yes, it is linear.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
So you ask why it's not circular, because creating new business models where the company actually gets the value of the waste in their business cycle. And what also makes me positive is that Regnskap Norge, so the Accounting Norway Association, the CEO there now is working along with a lot of other smart people from around the world to change the accounting standards. So that, for instance, when you depreciate an asset, a windmill has 2 million kroners worth of value in it. It's got neodymium, which is a magnet. It's got a lot of value out there, but it doesn't show in Siemens's books.
Exactly. So she's a student at our program, and I'm supervising her work on this.
Amazing.
Cool, huh?
Is she here today?
Yeah, I was going to take a little break, but you could, okay.
Yeah, she's at the Norwegian Broadcasting Company for Debatten.
Good.
That's why she couldn't come. I just want to add that in addition to new business models, we can do actually quite a bit in turning the gray companies around to green companies without having them help a more long-term perspective. And I think I'll mention some advice. Not this time either from a kind of green idealist, but this time the CEO of McKinsey, Dominic Barton. He has 3 or 4 principles. He says, when you appoint somebody to a board, it shouldn't be just because they're a famous name, but because they have time to work on the board and really understand in depth the long-term strategy of the company. Because today it's more status. They jump in, big brass, oh, very cool, oh, yeah, and then they run off again. And then they look at it the next board meeting. They don't do shit. They just collect the board money.
I can confirm this.
I can help.
Not always.
Not always, of course. No,
There's a lot of it.
The second is that very rarely the management has time for in-depth, long-term strategic conversation with the boards. So more collaboration between the boards and the management on long-term strategy questions. These are very simple things. It can be done within today's institutional structure, but within the governance structure, they just don't do it. And then executive compensation incentives that are linked not to stocks next year, but stocks maybe 5 to 10 years down the line. That would give CEOs a long-term incentive to run the company.
Like Shell did now.
Yes. And then, of course, much longer evaluation cycles for executives. And also, executives should invest at least a full year of their salary in the company stock and lock it down.
That's radical.
That's radical. That's McKinsey
That
advice.
would probably give good impact.
Of course. So, but these are things that can be done within today's institutional structure. But as I completely agree with you too as well, we have to look for new institutional structures. Can I mention one example? Am I talking too much?
You can. I think we need a small break. There is some drinks here to just breathe a bit. I hope you'll stay. We have a lot of interesting questions. I'm hoping to open more for the audience. Maybe you can use the break to just talk to each other what your questions are. There will be pizza at like 6:45. So just keep in there. That we'll talk about maybe we need a new theory of value. And whatever else you're wondering. So just 3 minutes. Just 3 minutes for a drink. I also brought here the way for rethinking economics. We made this publication there, rethinking finance, that you can grab and read. And if you're interested in writing down your name to be part of this organization, please let me know or write your name or something. We'll talk about that. Okay, we'll start again if people got their drinks.
Thank you very much.
There's so much.
Ja, no, den business administration. Major funds going on.
Ja, vi får försöka hålla in.
Starting again. So, any questions from the audience? We'll let you set the agenda now. Andrea, do you have a question? Do you want? Are you ready? Or you have some else?
Do you want me to stay here?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, I have a question because I was thinking about at the same time you're saying that the investors, the banks, the ones that issue green bonds, they don't have enough projects to invest in. And you also say that there is kind of a crowdfunding platform where people can put money so that they can create more money to invest. Aren't those two things a little bit contradictory? Why? Or like, why don't they meet each other? You know, what? How can both problems exist at the same time?
I think the quickest answer to that is to state the difference between the different classes of projects. This would typically be a 10 to 50 million euros, while green bonds tend to be or love much higher volume. So they would typically look at like the $1 billion for that size class of investments. I don't know if you have other.
Yeah, our Norgesgruppen is actually planning to issue a 400 million Norwegian kroner green bond today. That news was out. I think
in between.
It's a bit in between. I think you have to think about how much of the value on the stock exchange is owned by institutional investors is a good point to start. So pension funds own approximately 50% of all the stock market in the world. That is our money. If all of that money is going to be funneled into projects like green projects, there isn't enough projects out there at the moment to do that because there's so much money going into digging up more oil, for instance. So I think I would agree on the fact that these are like startups, and they typically will need less money to get off, and the big sort of infrastructure projects that we need, there aren't enough. There aren't enough people doing it. There aren't enough companies doing it, and there aren't enough people doing it.
What's the question back there?
Yeah, in your presentation you mentioned this 12-year mark. I heard a bit about this, but I was curious if you could illuminate more about what exactly the 12-year mark is. This, are we staring at Armageddon or Doomsday? What exactly?
This 12-year that is from the UN.
From the UN.
Panel that says that if we talked about how does it look like if we are heading for 2 degrees warm instead of 1.5, and it seems like we really want to hit the 1.5 and not 2, and then we have 12 years to do that. And also, if you look into more about the planetary boundaries and how they're interlinked, it can kind of escalate the development in the bad direction there as well. It makes sense what they say, and as an expert, I think, yeah. But I think this is a very important question. I think we should comment on that.
There's something called the carbon law, which is a principle about how to deal and reach a stable climate. It's launched by, again, Johan Rockström. He says that every 10 years we have to halve the emissions. So right now we're about 40 gigatons of CO2 per year, and that has to be to 20 by 2030, and then 10 to 2040, and then 5 to 2050. If we do that, we have a good chance at 1.5, and we're certainly below 2.0. So that's why they say 12 years, because that's halving it to 2030. So it's a kind of, but it's not absolute in any way. It's just that if we delay more than that at a 40 gigatons per year emission rate, it doesn't help even to halve it. We've blown it.
And I have a perspective here because the planetary boundaries is a good concept, but in that Donen economics book, and I urge you all to read it because it's pretty much all my perspectives distilled plus after 4 years or 6 years of studying economics in this question. But on the inside of that donut, the reason why it's called donuts is because it's the planetary boundaries on the outside, and on the insides is the sort of social just space for humanity. And my concern with the whole mission on climate change and carbon reduction is in what ways in what ways does it affect growth? Because when you look at the functions that the central banks, how many of you guys are studying economics? Samfunnsøkonomi. So are you reading? So 4 of you. Are you calculating the central bank functions of interest rates and unemployment? So Phillips curve stuff.
Yeah.
You're sitting with the equations.
Yep.
And if you do those long equations, if there's one thing I remember from those long algebraic equations is that if you remove growth, everything falls down. And that happened in Greece, right, after the financial crisis. So if you remove growth from the equation, you don't have 12 years. You have maybe 6 months, maybe 9 months. And I think this is important to understand as well in this debate. So it's not a question about whether we need growth or not. We need to find economic models that can handle both. Okay, we need a lot of solar power in the next 10 years. That is good growth. But we don't need...
That's green growth.
That's green growth. But we don't need that type of growth which produces a lot of plastic.
That's
Or at least this type of plastic.
Oh, that's recyclable.
Okay, it's one recyclable.
It's downcyclable.
Compostable, luckily.
So it's only 100 years until it degrades, not 200.
Did you want to comment quickly on that, Monica?
I kind of said something in that direction. The point is that we should not take one situation and interpret it in like black and white, because you mentioned Greece, because it has to do with the starting point of Greece, not only the fact that they took out growth.
No, they had a debt level that grew.
So it's also about
And that's also in the
we
question.
can also talk about where should the growth. I mean, yeah, we should have growth, but maybe the growth in the coming years will be in Africa, Asia, and India, China. There's still growth, but that is not for us, because there we will. And when it comes to investment, I would give you advice is to look at those countries, not the industry countries. We are taking out most of the growth. So growth is, and you can see the many dimensions, and we need it there, because there we can do a lot to cater for the challenges.
There's a question there for the
Did you
exam
guys
sound the same
catch how
subject.
the oil fund dropped a bunch of their climate stocks
Sorry?
recently? They dumped their climate stocks, the oil fund.
Yeah.
When you invest, or not the stocks, but the people
The
managing.
outsourced förvaltarna.
But they didn't reinvest those money in.
So it's a 20 billion Norwegian kroners or something. That was.
It increased to 45 or something, from 20 to 45, but they at least dropped their climate stocks or something. What are your thoughts on that?
I hope I have understood it correctly, but what I've read is that so far they have dropped their external brokers,
Yes.
Yeah.
bringing it home, and then they're reinvesting it within their environmental budget. Up again, it's about 70-80 billion NOK. They're just in-housing it rather than outsourcing it,
Okay.
because they're not permitted by the Norwegian government to reduce the environmental budget that's given by the parliament.
It's still such a small percentage of the whole fund.
It's
but
insanely short. It's like
0.3% or
exactly.
something.
So
We can come back and talk, take 2 hours on this one.
oh yes, it's completely insignificant, but politically speaking, the government is making as much noise as they can about it.
Was there a question right here? Yeah.
Yeah, so it's really great to hear that there's a lot of really good things happening in Norway and a lot of good initiatives. But when you think about it, Norway is really a fairly small country as opposed to the rest of the world. And this is a global issue, so to say. So how is the rest of the world doing on this matter? Where are we? I mean, we hear a bit about the 12-year and this and that, but if you look outside Norway.
What matter?
Well, in the call it in the sustainability matter as such, really, I mean, how is the rest of the world doing?
So I would comment on the investors. Investors in Norway are completely negligent compared to the outside of
Okay,
to
that's
Europe
good to know.
and the US, etc.
Use is coming up.
US is coming up. Norway, I think the knowledge level about this is pretty much the lowest I know.
But
They
that
don't
is
care,
so
they
weird
don't know
because,
about
like
it.
Monica said, every day you open the paper and it's inevitable not to read something about it.
And that's
And it's coming more and more, so you think that Norway is really ahead on this subject. So it's, I mean, if we're here, then it's really good to hear that the rest of the world is there. I hope.
Yeah. And a short comment, I come back to where I want to repeat. I know to learn something you have to repeat, so repeat because I
That's
think
good.
it's very important. That's back to EU. EU takes a big responsibility and they do a really good thing. Of course, they can also fail and they don't have an answer to anything. But their passion, their action, and what impact it had, and they actually has a goal to be the driver for this worldwide.
Mm.
You know, and they cooperate with the UN, but the UN is a big political organization. And everybody knows it's not the most speedy way of handling things. So far, I will say that.
Yeah, but what about the big economies like China and
Yeah. That's big.
that part of the world? Because
Here comes the good news. China,
yeah,
they're amazing.
oh,
Nobody's doing as much on increasing the resource productivity of the economy as the Chinese are. Of course, they have a terrible starting point because from 2000 to 2010, they did nothing but build inefficient coal plants.
Mm.
But now, nobody in the world is building more solar, wind. Nobody in the world is investing more in energy efficiency, cleaning the air, which means removing coal, replacing it with smarter energy systems. So right now, China has moved $800 billion and 1 million engineers into fixing the energy systems and the air pollution of the biggest Chinese cities. So what city in the world has the highest percentage of electric mobility? No, it's not Oslo. It's Shenzhen. They just got 17,000 electric buses. Yep. And nearly now all the taxis in the whole city are electric. While we are speaking about maybe we can have 10% electric taxis by 2020, and some parties find the Green Party a complete idealistic, crazy bunch who even think about that. The Chinese are doing it. So I'm very, very enthusiastic about what China is doing. I think if other countries start to pick up on the rate of change that China has now, which is about 4.5 to 5% carbon productivity improvement per year, then we will solve the climate crisis.
There's a comment, but let's keep it sort of within the finance sphere. I think if you go through all the different environmental policies, we'll sort of be here for hours.
Yeah, so this is business economics. So one of the greatest news I got this Christmas was a story about Indian solar panel farms that has now outcompeted the coal plants. So I think, if I can remember correctly, it was $2.28 or something per megawatt. It was something that it was actually quite a lot cheaper than the coal, which means that new technology is now outcompeting even the old technology that was invested not really with business valuation in sight. I think that is probably a great driver in terms of carbon. I think a new potential market in the circular world is waste. I think we still out there, we have a huge way to go, which for Norway presents itself with a lot of business opportunities because we have got systems that work and we can export that knowledge, which we're doing now to Eastern Europe. We can also do it to Vietnam. I was there now this Christmas. I know a lot about sustainability, but I still fly and I travel, and I'm sorry about that. But I was there and I asked them. I was there up in Phong Nha. It's this beautiful national reserve, rice fields everywhere. And then I sat down with them and I asked them about this, and they said, "Oh yeah, there's a guy that comes over, like he picks up the cardboard and we pay him for it, and he gets paid on the other side. And there's someone picking up the bottles. So these things all have value. There's an economy for it, but it's not on a big enough scale." So
There's a question over here.
So first of all, I'm happy that this ESG topic is coming into university finally, and that was the big thing.
This year's what?
I'm happy that the ESG topic is coming to university. That was the big thing missing. Can I ask more than one question? So first would be simple. Is ESG as an investment, a sustainable investment, profitable from investors' perspective? And if yes, then arguments and of course some example or case would be the best.
Can I answer that one?
Yeah.
As Kirsten also mentioned, there's so many research supporting that, yes, it is sustainable. And the goal is that when we all invest everything in the right things, then that's the mainstream, and there's no ESG or sustainability anymore. Then it's more those who don't do it that will lose money or don't get the return that they strive for. But still, it's like the climate. You have a lot of believers and not believers. And then they believe in their own experience and the same way. I mean, you can present facts without moving people. Then you have to get in. That's why you have both psychology and economy as a background, because the world is not fact-based. We like to think we are rational, especially in finance. We think everything is rational. People are rational. They're so not rational. So that's why when we see the conduct, it's kind of confusing and you don't understand why I don't do it more. So yes, you have fact, but then you have people's way of behaving, which is not rational.
But it's, I mean, let's go into that a bit. Is it profitable? But I think yes, it is. But is and that is, of course, important. Is it profitable? Will you make money of selling some product? But I think another question is it how profitable does it have to be? Does it have to be the most profitable? Do you have to maximize the profits? And one of my questions is also sort of around the same topic. What are we maximizing? We're maximizing the price, the shareholder. I mean, I was thinking if you want to draw in like new economic theory, I'm reading another name of some important books you should be reading, Mariano Mazzucato, The Value of Everything, and talking about like if going through the economic theory of economic history and saying how the old classical economists had a different idea of what value was. And this idea now that it's only the price that reflects what value is one of the things that's taken us apart. And then maybe the whole ESG idea is actually to sort of change that. It's not just changing how we look at the value of a company.
Being a little nerd on this issue, my dream, and I really woke up, is like, because I'm working within wealth management in Nordea, and we are the ones that do all the investment advice to all the customer and private banking and business and everything. And my dream is that when you come in and ask for advice, we should be able as a financial institution to say, okay, we can maximize it. Just take a number. 3.5 is probably is a realistic for 2019. But if you go down 0.51, you could actually also maybe go skiing the next 20 years in the cabin. And the Norwegians has a lot of cabin, and to make it a little tangible. Because I don't, what use will they have of that 0.5 more performance if they don't support the right direction? It's just to make it kind of understandable how it connects with what they read in the newspaper, what it actually means to them. And it's not just a method, it's real. To understand what it means if they are willing to do that. But I don't say that they have to go down in profit, but that depends on the time, if it's short term or long term, because if you're long term, it's no doubt sustainability is the most profitable anyway. But if it's more short term money you're investing, it may not be that profitable. So then you have to take a choice. But you don't get, the point is, as customer, you don't get the choice. They don't tell you what's different between choosing this or this. And coming into that kind of dialogue, I think is very important.
I'm skeptical towards that approach because it's based on the premise that you can get someone to make the right ethical decision, the right moral decision. I mean, if you, yeah, it's a sacrifice, and I mean, telling them that it's either this or skiing in Nordmarka. To me, it's yes. To me, if you tell your client that, if you told me as a client that, I would turn around and I would walk out. But I think
that they understand what options are.
But I would flip the question around, and I would say, to me, if it's not profitable in business, it's not sustainable. It needs to be profitable. That's number one. If it's profitable, it's sustainable. And then if it's quite profitable, you can start doing the next step, which is reducing your negative impact. Why would you do that? There's two reasons, business-wise, why you would do that. One is to reduce your resources, your inputs in the business model, which means that you reduce your costs, which means that you get a bigger margin. Now, from a communications perspective, if you actually went out and did that, I would say, okay, I can go out now to the market and I can sell that as a quality in the market. For us, it's a quality if it's sustainable. Does it last long? Does it reduce the carbon footprint? Okay, it's a quality that I'm willing to pay more for. So you can actually up the price, which means that I could go to a stockbroker. What does a stockbroker care about? Two things. One is margin and another is volume. I can go to a stockbroker and I can say, dude, this company thinking sustainably, you can have a bigger margin. We can sell a lot more. That's when you start getting the impact. That's when this will start rolling. That's when you get the market forces to work in the right way.
I would say that's 1 out of 4 good reasons.
All right, yeah.
So there's a lot of research now on the correlations between profitability and sustainability criteria, ESG. It seems to converge on 4 main points, which is, take yours first, higher performance. So you're cutting costs in resource waste, so you have lower running operational costs. And the good thing about that, when you get cutting the cost of goods sold, that goes straight down to the bottom line. So it has a high impact on the bottom line when you cut costs. Second is reduced risk, because if you are less exposed to, let's say, very volatile resource prices, because you buy less of the stuff or you source recycled stuff, then you have less exposure to that volatility in the råvarumarknaden. Commodity markets, thank you. And then third is, of course, brand value, which is the spin part of it, which also matters, because if you have a proper brand, it should be sustainable. You shouldn't be lose brand value because you're suddenly exposed to some scandal or that is some toxicity in your products. That's a real equity killer. And then the last one is, of course, talent and recruitment and turnover costs. So when you are a high ESG company, that seems to increase employees' motivation, morale, and even productivity. So summed up, higher performance in terms of the production and your value chains and circular value chains. Second, lower risk. Third, more stable brand value, and fourth, lower recruitment costs. And these things seem to explain why there is more than 80% studies where there is a positive correlation between profits and sustainability.
Questions and also maybe some comments on maybe we'll take a couple. Yeah, let's start with you.
Actually, this question is from one of my friends, actually, first. But since we're talking about this is mostly investors' decision, we want to influence how they decide what to invest. Would it be too idealistic to sort of expect that someday we might incorporate the sustainability into the credit ranking system in the stock market? Like, we want force them to think about sustainability when they try to think what I want to pick. Like, is it too hard to quantify, or is it never going to happen because it's just too idealistic to?
I think that's happening right now.
That's happening right now.
It has happened.
Yeah.
That's already.
If you look at, if you Google MSCI ESG ranking, you'll find them.
But why is still everybody's not really thinking about it?
Because it's new and people haven't been through the kind of competence raising that Monica is arguing for.
Yeah. Monica is one of the ones that knows most about this in Norway.
Yes, question right here.
Which brings me actually to my question, which is so I study economics out of an MBU, and how much do you think is and you know, in economics you learn a way to think. They say we learn to teach you how to think like an economist. And my question is, how much of this mindset that you see in your bank around you, Monica, how much of the lagginess can you put down to that frame of thinking? I know it's a hard thing to quantify. I'm not asking.
Right away. It's the main, one of the main challenges. I mean, you have short-termism and all these kind of models, and norms is extremely resistant. But the norms hangs again is connected to what you say, what you learned.
Yeah.
How we have seen. I mean, we have learned for so many years how to look at the world. We think it is as fact. We don't have even imagined. I mean, to what would you call de-learn, like kind of let go of what you've already learned is one of the most difficult things people do. And they feel insecure, they have their status, they perform on what they have learned, and now they will scrap that. Of course, you have a lot of resistance to that. So yes, that's why I said we are not so rational as we think we are. So
but you think we have to change economics education to make this change?
Oh yes,
Yes.
That's why I'm running around and.
Yeah, very short. There are some historians of economics, or economic historians, depending how you put it. They have researched how long that time does it take before new knowledge, like the ESG and the MSCI, comes up and then goes into the textbook of mainstream Econ 101 books.
Good luck.
And they found out, after doing that empirically, studying history, I mean, that's the first mention, theory comes. And they found like 25 to 30 years.
I'm still learning the theories that Paul Samuelson wrote in the 50s.
Exactly. And then the next level is, how long time does it take before you change the textbook, before those people educated at that point get into a decision-making position as seniors in a big corporation? And then you can add another 20 to 30 years. So that's the, shall we say, rate of innovation in economic theory, and it is a catastrophe. And that's why I'm here, and that's why I'm applauding Ebba each time I see her. So keep going, because we need to change the way economics is taught.
Thank you, Anders.
Yeah, because we need to look at this historically, and the period that we're in now, I mean, before the crash, it was called the Great Moderation. It lasted for 30, 40 years. Lucas and a bunch of great economists solo figured out a way to smooth the business cycle, which gave us immense growth. And the question is what's the cost of that wealth? And I think actually what you guys is, you should go back. You should go back and read Adam Smith. Because Adam Smith, he was a philosopher, not only an economist. So you can't only read the economics of it. You need to read the philosophy of it as well. And then you need to go back and ask yourself the question. I mean, this period of time since Greenspan said that the only responsibility you have is to maximize shareholder value, it's only 40 years. We're at the anomaly of history right now. But then I also think that, and this is the perspective why we need growth. We have now 30, 40, 50 years of growth into renewable energy, waste, these things that we're going to solve. But if we aren't fixing the economic models at the same time, I mean, we need to start now, is my point. We need to start fixing those right now, and we need people like you to do it. Because I chose to go into communications instead.
Is there pizza? I should think of a question.
Yeah, so the pizzas are here. So I was thinking, I want to stand up so you can see. The pizzas are here, but I was thinking that we could have a quick break at 7 and everyone go get as much pizza as they want. And then if you guys don't mind, because it seems like this ball's still rolling, if you guys want to come back in and keep having a discussion, then we can do it like that. Or you guys can bring your pizza back in and we can keep going. Would that be okay with you guys?
Yeah.
All right, then let's go get some pizza.
Well, okay, maybe I think I'm gonna stop it, but we will continue the discussion. I'm also hoping maybe we'll have some pizza. If somebody wants to go out and grab a beer and continue the conversation there, that would also be fun. But thank you to SBU for organizing all the practical parts of this event. Thank you to our amazing panel for the conversation you've been having.
Say thank you for everyone that showed up, and next time we're gonna get an auditorium, I promise. But here's presents for this panelists. Thank you so much for coming and having a wonderful discussion. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Thank you everyone for showing up.
And please don't leave without, if you want to be part of Rethink Economics, please don't leave without giving me your email address. I have a piece of paper over there, just come talk to me. But I do want to continue this debate a little bit, so come back in with your pizzas and let's continue talking maybe in a more informal way. Thank you.